We usually expect the great crossroads of history to leave behind massive stone ruins, but in the Brahmaputra Valley, the ancient record is largely invisible. This gap in the timeline is stark. We possess almost no connected accounts of the people or their rulers until the Ahom invasion of 1228 AD, leaving centuries of prior history in near total silence. This erasure is a consequence of the landscape. The valley floor is made of friable soil, and the powerful snow-fed rivers are constantly carving new channels, cutting away their own banks and swallowing the foundations of any structures built near the water. What the water missed, the biology of the valley consumed. Aggressive peepal tree roots germinate in the smallest cracks of masonry, eventually crushing stone structures that have already been weakened by the region's frequent, violent earthquakes. Because the earth here refuses to hold on to physical monuments, the history of the region survives elsewhere, layered into the languages and the mythology of the people who inhabit it. This intangible history can be read through philology, using language to map the movements of people long after their physical empires have vanished. The Bodo people left a permanent mark through a single repeating syllable. In their ancient tongue, D or T means water. Their territorial reach remains visible on the map today in major rivers, the Dibru, Dihing, Diku, and Tista. This occurs through a specific process of subjection. When one nation conquers another, it often imposes its own language, or a smaller tribe adopts the tongue and a dominant power, preserving the history of that supremacy in their daily speech. These prefixes are evidence of a prolonged Bodo domination that physically disappeared, yet managed to permanently name the landscape. The geography of the valley dictated a specific historical pattern. The soil is exceptionally fertile, providing a level of material wealth that, over several generations, often led the ruling classes toward a more luxurious and less vigilant lifestyle. By contrast, the surrounding mountains were home to hardier tribes. Their unforgiving environment produced a more aggressive population that looked down at the wealthy plains as a target for expansion. This created a cycle. Hill chiefs would unite their tribes to swoop down and seize the resources of the valley, establishing a new dynasty in place of the old. These new conquerors would eventually settle into the same prosperous, sleepy hollow of the Brahmaputra. Within a few generations, the softening effects of the climate would leave them vulnerable to the next wave of invaders from the hills. In this way, the valley functioned as a system of constant demographic turnover, ensuring it remained a place of continuous transformation and layered identity. To manage these constant waves of invasion, early Hindu priests developed a cultural strategy of absorption. They realized that large tribal populations could be unified more effectively through legend than through force. When a tribal warlord took power, priests would often invent a noble lineage for him, linking the new king to the heroes of pan-Indian epics. Admitting these tribal nobles to the Kshatriya warrior rank gave them divine legitimacy. In return, the priests were granted lucrative positions at court and the authority to integrate the king's followers into the social fabric of Hinduism. We see this clearly with the integration of local tribal figures like Narakasur and Bhagadatta. They were written directly into the Mahabharata, transforming local warlords into legendary kings. These myths were anchored to the landscape at sacred sites like the Kamakya Temple. Positioned on a hill overlooking the river, it became the center of a religious synthesis that unified the fractured valley. This used mythology to construct a shared cultural identity, allowing the region to remain stable despite a constantly shifting political landscape. The Ahoms represent the final stage of this process. They were military masters who ruled for 6 centuries, yet they eventually surrendered their own cultural identity to the land they governed. After 600 years of rule, the Ahom conquerors abandoned their native tribal language entirely in favor of Assamese. This history resulted in a total syncretism, where every group of invaders was eventually absorbed by the culture of the valley they once conquered. The history of ancient Assam survives outside of physical ruins, etched into the names of rivers, the features of the people, and the enduring myths that still define the valley.